The morning began like any other. Quiet, still, and harmless. Eleanor Price sat at her small kitchen table, sunlight trembling through the lace curtains, turning her cup of tea into liquid amber. The house hummed with the old refrigerator's tired breath, the only sound in a life that had become routine. She reached for her phone to check her balance, expecting the usual comfort of numbers she'd spent decades building. Her safety, her independence, her proof that hard work had meant something. The screen blinked once, refreshed, and then froze her heart. Available balance. $0.00. Eleanor blinked. Once. Twice. The numbers stayed. The steam from her tea thinned and vanished. A pulse started behind her temples. She reopened the app, certain it was a glitch. It wasn't. The recent transactions filled the screen like wounds. Multiple wire transfers, each one larger than the last. The final transfer was labeled asterisk, authorized by Daniel Price. Asterisk. Her son's name. Her thumb hovered over the screen, refusing to believe it. There had to be a mistake. Daniel handled some of her accounts, yes, but only to help her with online payments. He was her boy, her only one. She had packed his lunches when he was 5, paid his tuition when he was 20, and smiled through his arrogance at 30. She called the bank. A pleasant recorded voice asked for her account number. The human voice that followed was less pleasant, efficient, distant, apologetic. Yes, ma'am. All transfers were verified under joint authorization. We have records of consent emails from your listed account. My account, she whispered. Yes, ma'am. The voice paused, uncomfortable. Is there anything else I can help you with today? Eleanor ended the call. Her reflection in the black phone screen looked older, unfamiliar. She set it on the table and tried to steady her breathing. Then, almost without knowing why, she opened Facebook. Daniel's smile greeted her immediately. White shirt, sunglasses, champagne in hand. Tanya, his wife, leaned into him, radiant. And there, in the background, Tanya's mother, laughing under the Roman sun. Caption asterisk Rome. Our new beginning. Comments flooded the post. Congratulations. Hearts. Envy. Eleanor read each one, every word slicing a little deeper. Then she did something that surprised even herself. She smiled. Small, brittle, unrecognizable. He took everything, she whispered into the quiet room. Her eyes lifted toward the window, the sunlight already fading. Then softly, almost tenderly, she added, but not for long. The next morning, the world looked unchanged, the same sleepy street, the same chatter of birds outside her window, yet everything inside Eleanor had shifted. She moved through her kitchen as if underwater, each motion deliberate, distant. Her teacup clinked softly against the saucer, the sound sharp in the quiet house. Outside, the faint hum of voices floated through her open window. Mrs. Talbot and her sister were at it again, gossiping on their porch. Did you see Daniel's photos? Rome. Imagine that. Such a good boy, always taking care of his mother. Eleanor's fingers tightened around the edge of the sink. She forced herself to breathe, slow and steady, letting their words pass through her like smoke. They didn't know. No one did. And she intended to keep it that way. By noon, she was sitting at her small desk, sorting through unpaid bills. The electricity notice. The mortgage warning. She folded each paper neatly and tucked it away inside a drawer. When the phone rang, the bank again, no doubt. She let it buzz until it stopped. The silence afterward felt merciful. Her gaze fell on an old photograph pinned to the wall. Daniel at his college graduation, his grin wide, her husband's arm around them both. That day had been hot, the air sticky with pride and relief. She had worked 14-hour days cleaning other people's houses, scrubbing their sinks, polishing their floors, just to make sure Daniel wore that cap and gown. She closed her eyes. The smell of bleach, the ache in her knees, the way her husband used to rub her shoulders at night when exhaustion made her cry, it all came back in one tidal wave. He had died 12 years ago, peacefully, with his hand in hers. His last words still lived in her chest. Asterisk, never let bitterness define you, Ellie. Promise me. Asterisk. And she had. Even now, when bitterness clawed at her throat, She swallowed it whole. Eleanor rose from her chair and walked to the closet. From the back, behind old coats and forgotten sweaters, she pulled out a worn leather notebook. Its label, faded but legible, read, "House deeds and family papers." She set it on the table, opened to a clean page, and wrote one word across the top in slow, careful script. Plan. Then she drew a small, steady line beneath it, as if underlining her resolve. The next morning, Eleanor's grief had settled into something colder, cleaner, a quiet determination that surprised her. The tears were gone, replaced by precision. She cleared the kitchen table, set out her glasses, and opened the old leather notebook. The first page bore a neat title, Plan. Below it, she began listing everything she could remember. The savings accounts, her pension, the small insurance policy from her late husband's job. Every document had a story. Every number carried years of labor. Her handwriting was slow, deliberate. She paused now and then, not from hesitation but from thought. Mapping, connecting, seeing the pattern of her life as if for the first time. For the first time, the notebook wasn't about what she owned. It was about what she had lost, and what she could still control. By noon, she dressed neatly, pulled on her beige cardigan, and left for the first time in days. The autumn air bit at her cheeks as she walked to the small bungalow 2 streets over. The brass plaque still read *W. H. Parker, CPA, Ret. Her old friend and accountant, Walter. Walter opened the door, surprised but warm. "Ellie, you look like you've seen a ghost." "Not a ghost," she said evenly. "A lesson." Inside, she laid her notebook on his desk and told him everything. The empty account, the forged transfers, Daniel's name. Walter listened without interrupting, his brow furrowing deeper with every detail. When she finished, he turned his monitor around and typed silently for a while. Finally, he sighed. "He didn't just take your money, Ellie. He used digital authorization, fake emails, electronic signatures. You've been technically complicit, at least on paper." Her jaw tightened, but her eyes didn't flinch. "Then the paper needs to change." Walter leaned back, studying her. "You can press charges. We can start an investigation." Eleanor closed the notebook softly. "No, Walter. I won't take him to court." "Then what will you do?" Her gaze met his, calm and steady. "I'll take his piece." A long silence followed. The ticking of Walter's clock filled the room like a heartbeat. Finally, he said, cautious, "You're not thinking of doing something dangerous, are you?" Eleanor's lips curved into that same faint, unreadable smile. "Dangerous," she whispered. "Only to his conscience." Eleanor had always been meticulous, the kind of woman who kept receipts in labeled envelopes and remembered the expiration dates of every document she ever signed. That quiet habit, once dismissed as old-fashioned, was now her greatest weapon. For 2 days, she and Walter worked in near silence, the rhythmic tapping of his keyboard filling the room like the ticking of a metronome. With his contacts at the bank and a retired auditor from the state office, they traced what Daniel had missed. Old accounts, joint certificates, dormant bonds still registered under both their names. Small things, overlooked. But small things had power. Each morning began with tea and ended with a signature. Eleanor filed quiet legal holds on everything that still bore her name, effectively freezing assets Daniel didn't even know existed. There was no shouting, no confrontation, just quiet strokes of a pen, soft clicks of a mouse, and a mother's patience sharpened into precision. By the 3rd day, she had learned to use anonymity like armor. Under an untraceable email, she began sending carefully worded tips, one to the state tax agency about undeclared income, another to the U.S. Treasury's fraud department. Then, with Walter's help, a brief message to the travel authorities noting suspicious high-value transfers tied to dual passports and overseas spending. She didn't sign her name. She didn't need to. At home, the house had grown emptier but calmer. Eleanor sat at her desk and pulled out another folder, her will. She reread it carefully, then drove to her lawyer's office downtown. "I'd like to make some changes," she said simply. The lawyer blinked behind his glasses. "Of course. To whom do you wish to leave your estate?" Eleanor smiled faintly. "To the people who never took anything from me." She signed her modest savings and the deed to her house to a local shelter for women who'd lost their homes. When she left the office, the air felt clearer, the weight in her chest lighter. She had nothing left to lose, and that made her unstoppable. That night, she sat by her window, the city lights flickering in the distance. Her phone lay face down beside her teacup. Then it buzzed once, a single, short vibration. She turned it over. Notification *** account. Daniel Price. Frozen. Verification pending. **. Eleanor's eyes softened. She exhaled slowly, like someone who'd just found her balance again. The Roman sun poured gold over the cafe terrace where Daniel Price lounged like a man who believed the world owed him warmth. He leaned back in his chair, sunglasses glinting, a glass of champagne sweating in his hand. Laughter spilled from their table. Tanya snapping selfies, her mother Rhonda gushing about finally living the life we deserve. Daniel smiled, the same easy grin that had always worked on everyone. Clients, teachers, and especially his mother. He had convinced himself that charm was a form of intelligence, and manipulation, a kind of art. "Babe, the card took forever to go through again," Tanya said, lowering her voice. "Maybe call the bank." Daniel waved her off. "Banks are slow when you travel." "It's fine." "You sure?" "You said your mom signed all the authorizations." "What if?" "She won't do anything," he interrupted, his tone clipped. "She's harmless. The woman can barely use her phone." Rhonda laughed, sipping her cocktail. "Exactly. Mothers are meant to give. It's what they do. She'll forgive you before she even understands what happened." Daniel chuckled, pretending to agree, but her words left a faint irritation. Forgive. Understand. The truth was, he didn't want his mother's forgiveness. He wanted her silence, her absence from the life he had built far away from her tiny house and her moral lectures. A waiter brought the bill. Daniel tossed his platinum card onto the tray, confident, until the man returned moments later, awkwardly clearing his throat. "Mi dispiace, signore." Declined. Daniel frowned. "Run it again." The waiter did. Declined. Again. Tanya's smile faltered. "Maybe it's the limit." He pulled out another card. Declined. A third. Declined. His pulse quickened, but he forced a grin. "System glitch. I'll call the bank later." Rhonda leaned in, her tone sugar-coated but sharp. "You said your mother had plenty. You didn't mess something up, did you?" He snapped. "No. Everything's fine." But as they left the cafe, the hollow echo of his own words clung to him like humidity. He checked his phone, still no messages from the bank, no alerts explaining the sudden freeze. Just the quiet buzz of tourists and the hum of Roman traffic. Then, as they entered a luxury boutique on Via del Corso, his phone vibrated. New email. Subject. From home. Daniel's smile vanished. The screen lit his face pale in the afternoon sun. Daniel sat on the hotel bed, the curtains half drawn, the room glowing with the golden haze of late afternoon. The laughter from Tanya and Rhonda in the adjoining suite filtered through the wall. Shallow, nervous. He ignored them. His focus was on the email sitting at the top of his inbox. Subject * from home. Sender * no name. His thumb hesitated. Then, curiosity won. The message contained a single video attachment. No text, no greeting, just the file name, Ellie_messaged MP4. He pressed play. The video opened in soft light, the camera slightly tilted, showing a small, familiar living room. The lace curtains, the worn armchair, the ticking wall clock, all pieces of his childhood, frozen in time. And then, his mother. Eleanor sat upright, dressed neatly as if preparing for church. Her hair was brushed, her posture straight. She looked directly into the camera, eyes steady, calm, but behind them, something sharp flickered, something unflinching. "Daniel," she began softly, "I know what you did. No accusation, no anger. Just fact. Delivered like a verdict. You took my savings, but not my dignity," she continued, voice steady as glass. "You emptied my account, but not my purpose. I only wanted you to know. I saw you for who you've become. And I am not angry. I'm awake. Daniel swallowed hard. Her words landed with the quiet force of truth. There was no pleading, no drama, just silence thick enough to make the walls close in. She leaned forward slightly, her hands visible now. In one, she held a small brass key. In the other, a sealed envelope. She placed both on the table in front of her, carefully, deliberately. "These are for you," she said. "You'll know what to do with them, if you're ready to be the man your father thought you'd be." The clock in the background ticked 3 more times. Then the video ended. No fade out, no goodbye. Just the still image of the table and the letter. For a long moment, Daniel couldn't move. The room felt smaller, the air thinner. From the next room, Tanya's voice broke the silence. "What's wrong? Who was it?" He didn't answer. Rhonda leaned in, squinting at the paused video on his phone. Her voice trembled just a little. "Is she dying?" Daniel's jaw clenched, but he couldn't speak. The only sound left was the clock ticking, even here, thousands of miles away. The doctor's office had smelled faintly of antiseptic and rain. Eleanor sat in the cold chair opposite Dr. Levin, the sterile light drawing soft shadows under her eyes. She listened as his words came slowly, carefully measured, each one like a stone placed gently but irrevocably into her lap. "Stage 4, he said. "It's advanced. We can manage pain, but it's not curable." For a long moment, Eleanor said nothing. She nodded once, as if he'd confirmed something she already knew deep down, the quiet exhaustion in her bones, the ache that never left her ribs. Dr. Levin looked almost apologetic. "You're remarkably calm." Eleanor gave a faint smile. "I've had worse surprises." When she stepped outside, the rain had stopped, but the world felt cleaner somehow. The gray sky shimmered with the faintest light, and the air smelled like new beginnings instead of endings. She pulled her scarf tighter and walked home slowly, savoring every sound. Her footsteps on the wet pavement, the laughter of 2 children splashing in puddles. For the first time in weeks, her chest felt steady. That night, she sat by the window with her notebook open to its final pages. Her pen glided smoothly as she wrote, each word a quiet declaration of intent. Asterisk. I am not angry. I am not broken. Justice doesn't need noise. Asterisk. She paused, then added beneath it. Asterisk. He will learn not from my wrath, but from my silence. Asterisk. The clock ticked on. The house, though small, held the kind of peace that only arrives when a person stops fearing the end. She sipped her tea, the same blend she'd shared with her husband years ago, and whispered his name once, softly, as if to tell him she was keeping her promise. 2 days later, Walter knocked on her door. His eyes looked heavier than usual, his coat damp from the drizzle. She motioned for him to sit, but he stayed standing. "Ellie," he said quietly, "I thought you'd want to know. It's happening. Daniel's accounts. They're under federal review. Fraud investigation." Eleanor didn't flinch. She simply closed the notebook and set her hand over it, her fingers light, almost affectionate. "Good," she murmured. "Then the lesson has begun." Outside, thunder rumbled distantly, not loud, just enough to make the window tremble, like the world quietly taking her side. The morning in Rome began with confusion and ended in chaos. Daniel woke to the sound of Tanya pacing the hotel suite, her phone pressed to her ear, her voice sharp and desperate. "They said the cards blocked again," she hissed. "All of them." "Daniel, what the hell is going on?" He sat up, blinking at the sunlight spilling through the balcony doors. His phone buzzed with one notification after another. Asterisk transaction declined. Account under review. Verification required. Asterisk. He rubbed his temples, muttering, "It's temporary. Just a system hold." But even as he said it, his chest tightened. The last of their cash was gone, spent on dinners and designer shoes. Rhonda emerged from the next room, wrapped in a robe, her expression sour. "Your mother's little nest egg isn't looking so safe now, huh?" she said, voice dripping with irritation. "I told Tanya, you can't trust small-town banks. Or small-town women." "Enough!" Daniel snapped, but his voice cracked. By noon, the hotel manager knocked. Polite but firm, he explained that their payment hadn't cleared. Their suite, he added, would need to be vacated by evening. Tanya's face went pale. "We've been here for weeks. You can't just throw us out." "I am very sorry, Signora," the manager replied in careful English. "But without valid payment," he trailed off, leaving the silence to finish the sentence for him. Daniel's phone rang again, an unfamiliar number, Italian code. A clipped voice introduced himself as an investigator with the Financial Crimes Unit. "Mr. Price, your transactions match several flagged accounts. We'll need to verify your identity and income source." "What? This is insane," he shouted, but the line had already gone dead. Panic gnawed at the edges of his composure. He tried calling the bank. Endless holds. Then Walter. Voicemail. Finally, he dialed the number he'd avoided for months. His mother's. The call rang 4 times. No answer. Tanya crossed her arms. Well, what did she say? He stared at the dark screen. She didn't. Hours later, as they sat in the hotel lobby surrounded by luggage and humiliation, his phone buzzed once more, a voicemail. He pressed play. Her voice was calm, steady, and devastatingly familiar. "Come home, Daniel," Eleanor said softly. "If you can still afford the flight." Then the line clicked, leaving only silence and the faint sound of the ocean beyond their window. The sky over the small town was the color of dust when Daniel's taxi pulled into the cracked driveway. The house looked smaller than he remembered, the paint faded, the flower beds overgrown, the mailbox leaning slightly as if tired of waiting for mail that never came. He stood at the gate for a long time, hands trembling, heart thudding with the weight of everything unsaid. He unlocked the door. The familiar creak greeted him like a ghost. Inside, the house was silent. Too silent. The air smelled faintly of lavender and old wood. Everything was tidy, but it felt vacant. There was no sign of life, only order, her order. On the kitchen table sat a single object, the worn leather notebook, closed neatly beside a sealed envelope. A small brass key lay on top. Daniel stared for several seconds before reaching out. His hands shook as he unfolded the letter. The handwriting was unmistakable, elegant, looping, every letter deliberate, as if she'd written with patience instead of anger. "My dear Daniel. You taught me to be silent by ignoring my worth. And in that silence, I discovered something you never understood. How powerful quiet truth can be. You took what I had saved for a lifetime. But you gave me something greater, clarity. I finally saw you not as the boy I raised, but as the man you chose to become. I am not angry. I am free. And now, you can be too, if you decide to change before it is too late. Asterisk in the notebook beside you is everything. Records, transfers, even the contacts who can clear your name if you decide to face what you've done honestly. You can still rebuild, Daniel. But only if you start with truth. Justice doesn't need noise. It only needs light. Your mother. Eleanor. Daniel's throat closed as he finished reading. He pressed the letter to his forehead, eyes burning. The room felt smaller, the ticking clock louder, the same clock from her video, still keeping perfect time. He opened the notebook. Every page was filled with evidence, dates, and gentle notations in her hand. Breadcrumbs leading him back to integrity, if he dared to follow them. Tears blurred the ink as he whispered. She never wanted revenge. Then it hit him. Her silence had been his mirror, forcing him to face the one person he could never escape, himself. Spring came gently that year, soft and forgiving, the kind of season Eleanor would have loved. The cemetery was quiet except for the rustle of trees and the distant hum of bees over the wildflowers that had begun to reclaim the soil. Daniel stood by her grave, hands buried in his coat pockets, head bowed beneath a sky that looked too blue for grief. The new plaque gleamed faintly in the sunlight. Eleanor Price. She died with a smile. He traced the engraved words with his thumb, his chest tightening. The phrase wasn't poetic exaggeration. The undertaker had said she really had smiled, peaceful, almost amused, as if she'd known something no one else did. Maybe she had. Daniel set a small bundle of papers and a checkbook on the grass beside the stone. The notebook, her notebook, lay on top, its corners worn from his sleepless nights flipping through each page. He had followed every line, every instruction, paying back what he could, selling what he had left. Every repayment, every quiet act of correction felt like a confession. No one knew it was him donating to the shelter she'd supported, or sending anonymous money orders to the women whose mortgages she once helped pay. He didn't need them to. The point wasn't redemption in the world's eyes, it was peace in his own. He knelt, the damp earth soaking into his jeans, and opened the notebook one last time. Inside, on the very last page, she'd written only 2 words. Well done. He laughed softly, breath catching halfway between sorrow and gratitude. As he rose, a breeze moved through the branches overhead, scattering sunlight across the stone. For a moment, he imagined her in that little house, the lace curtains breathing with the wind, the faint scent of tea, the old rocking chair creaking its steady rhythm. He closed his eyes and could almost hear her voice again. Calm, unwavering, eternal. Asterisk, she never shouted. But the world still heard her. Asterisk. When he finally walked away, the grave remained bathed in light. Back home, the rocking chair sat by the window, perfectly still. The sunlight spilled across it like a benediction, silent, soft, and undeniably victorious.